Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. It is Wednesday time for the PM edition of our Painting in Your PJs series. And I'm a little tired this evening, so I'm extra excited to be here for a little bit of creative time and some fun trips down memory road. So, our prompt for today is to write about a place you'd love to visit or revisit and the gratitude you feel for those experiences. So, what I'm loving about this gratitude journaling process that we're doing all month long on November, and holy cow, we're halfway through November today, is there's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of deep reflection, opportunity to look at things differently through a different lens. And today is no exception. So, today, with this prompt, what I immediately thought of was my trip to Spain when I was in college. I think it was between freshman and sophomore year, or maybe sophomore and junior year of university. And I went with a group of kids on a tour, and we toured around Spain for 2 weeks, and then we went to school for a month in Santiago de Compostela, which is in the northwest of Spain, up above Portugal, in the state of Galicia. And one of my most favorite experiences was visiting the Alhambra, which is a Moorish building. Yes, I'm excited to talk about travel, which was a Moorish building. And I fell in love with the space, the decoration, with the tile work, and with the colors. And I went and grabbed, I was doing some journaling in some writing in my journal before I got on, and I went and found my picture album from Spain from all those years ago. It's pretty faded now. Pictures don't last, but it was fun to look at that. And Brad came in and we were kind of looking at it together. But I was really inspired by the colors of the tile. And so I want to do something related to the colors of the tile from the Alhambra. And before I do that, I wanted to mention that my friend Marion, who's on live with me this evening, are hosting a mini retreat at the end of, or in early December, called At the Threshold of Becoming. This is a powerful time of year to really look at what has been, what is coming, to use art as a tool, as we do on this show and in Marion and I in both of our lives, for self discovery, for reflection, and looking at where we've been this year, but also looking what are we at the edge of? What's the threshold we're standing at? Looking through, maybe peeking through towards what's coming in 2024. So we're super, super excited about this event. It's on sale right now for $47. I put the link in the chats for anybody, and it includes the coupon code. Includes the coupon code in the chat. Would love to have you come and play with us Friday, December 9th, and Friday, December 8th, and Saturday, December 9th. I've been working like hard on content creation today, and I feel my brain's a little twisty. So I'm extra ready for some art and super excited to be sharing this event with people that is all about reflecting on the threshold as an archetypal energy that is about beginnings and endings, about standing in the present and the now. I'll let Marion share anything else in the chat that she wants to share about the event as well. But we're super, super excited about this opportunity to gather live with people. So I went ahead and grabbed my photo album from Spain. I was looking to see if it had a date on here. Looks like some of those dates are covered up. There'll be a date in here somewhere, but I have all the tickets, right? Photographs of the different places that we visited, lots of discos, lots of gin and tonics and sangria were drunk, but we visited the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. It was one of my favorite places, and you can see The pictures are really faded. You can't really see a lot of the colors and the detail anymore, but you can see the sweeping views. Images and making meaning, yes, our favorite things. And you can see the scroll work here. And it's this incredible palace with all these amazing Turkish baths, had beautiful fountains everywhere, these sort of arches, lots of portal pictures in here, Marion, lots of arches and doorways leading to different places and things. So it was a fabulous, fabulous place to visit. And I have one really fun, silly picture of me in here with a pigeon on my head. So this was me way back all of those years ago. Let me zoom in. So, as Brad said, with the giant sunglasses on, and it was just, Spain was amazing in so many ways, but I really had a great time everywhere I went. But one of the memories that always really stands out was visiting the Alhambra in Spain. And so I encourage you to think about what are the places that you have visited that you would love to revisit, or what are the places that you would love to travel to, the places you'd love to travel to, and what's the gratitude that you feel for these experiences. So when I think about travel, I think a lot about, yes, yeah, tiles of Italy too. Yes, so much beautiful tile work. Santa Barbara had amazing tile work. Um, when I think about gratitude for travel, I feel like there's nothing like getting to see other parts of the world. There's nothing like having that opportunity to see places that are so much older than anything here in the United States. I feel immense gratitude for the art that I got to see. I'm a huge fan of Juan Miro, who's an abstract painter, and I got to go to his museum. I also loved going to the National Museum in Madrid, seeing Hieronymus Bosch, seeing the murals by Diego Rivera, his, not Diego Rivera, sorry, by Picasso, his Guernica in person. So many amazing experiences, the richness of color, texture, pattern, design. And if you know me at all, you know I love Zentangle. Zentangle is all about pattern. And so I had a couple of different ideas for what I might want to do in my journal. It would be fun to simply do a collaged page of images of tile, but I thought it would be a fun challenge to try to recreate this image in my journal. But then once I cut it out and stuck it down, I'm like, well, I could also repeat the image around the page and start with the image on the page, excuse me, and see what's possible. I'm going to take a sip of my tea here. And as I'm looking at this, I can see the lines of the patterns. When I first looked at it, all I saw were kind of the big circles and the small circles, but as I'm looking at this, there's actually a nice grid pattern here. And of course, what I don't have on my desk right now is a ruler. I might have to go grab a ruler because I love the idea of recreating this pattern in my notebook and then adding some color to it with, I don't know with what, but the first challenge feels like drawing the pattern and see where that might take me. And this is a fun way of looking at a travel experience rather than looking at sweeping vistas or big details or pictures of the whole building. This is getting really granular and intimate with that sort of micro perspective. I also grabbed some circle drawing tools that I thought might be useful. And actually, I can probably use the edge of this for a ruler as well. So I think there's some opportunity here to explore pattern in a different way. And as I explore pattern, to engage in enjoyment of in the memories of the different trips and places and travel I had to Spain. All right, and I'm trying to decide. Let me grab a pencil here. I think this nice small mechanical pencil. So I came here with just an idea of visiting Spain, and I printed out this image, and now it's a challenge to figure out, okay, where am I going with this? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to make my grid pattern. Actually, this would be really fun to color with watercolor. And I get to decide if I want to continue the pattern on the page or not. I was at an event this last year where I was lucky enough to teach called Tangle U. It's an continuing education event for certified zentangle teachers, and it was the last one ever after 10 years, which is really sad. It was just a great event. And one of the classes taught by my friend Nisha, I love Nisha's brain and his ability to break things down and look at things differently. That the exercise that he had us do was, we had some printed paper with pattern, and then we simply continued the pattern around the page and morphed and twisted and changed the pattern. And it was such a beautiful idea. And I thought about doing that here, but I don't quite have enough paper. If I'd made this a little smaller, I might have done that. But let's see if I can recreate this grid and recreate the pattern. And so if you're playing along tonight with me, I want to encourage you to think about a place that you have traveled. Okay, my picture wasn't straight on the page, so I'm going to ignore the edge of the paper and go with the lines. Think about a place you visited and think about a detail of that place. Think about a detail of that place. And how could you bring the detail into your art journal? What might be it could be something botanical or floral, right? It could be, trying to get these lines lined up, and I see that one's actually more kind of over there. It could be a particular building you visited or a landscape that you remember, and you could find photos of it and collage it into your art journal. You could also do what I'm doing and figure out how to recreate an aspect of that in an art journal. And so this, I may be quiet tonight because I have to be, I have to really think about what I'm doing here and where I'm going with this design. And thank goodness I'm not a perfectionist, or I might not even attempt this because it definitely feels a little mind twisty. And it was interesting that what I noted first when I was looking at the pattern was simply the sort of, floral elements in design, not the grid. Grids are not generally my favorite, but what I'm appreciating about the grid here is the guideline it's going to offer for recreating this pattern. Maybe, maybe not. This may be one of these pages that I get part of the way through and decide that I don't want to do it. I'd rather just collage it in here and have that be my happy memory and give up and get frustrated. So we'll see what happens. You'll get to join me on the journey here. And then I am going to move that down here. And I'm going to extend this pattern maybe one more section down. And I'm okay with some of the lines hanging out over the edges. I don't feel the need to fill every space. This is an exploration, experimentation. And what I love about this kind of drawing practice is that it helps us look at things differently. You know, for example, I mentioned that when I first looked at it, I didn't see the grid. Maybe you did, but when I looked at it, what I saw were just these round floral patterns, you know, and notice how they're in a circle around that center pattern there. And I really love the palette. I was pulled in by this kind of muted palette, not necessarily my normal colors. And by the simplicity of the shapes, of the individual shapes, and how the individual shapes combine to make this overall both geometric and floral pattern. So I've had a lot of fun just sort of pausing to look at this pattern. And so right here in the center, I've drawn the grid lines all the way through, but those grid lines kind of sort of disappear here in the center unless you really look for them. But this is really helpful because it's giving me that the guideline for where to draw this. And I think I'm going to come in and I'm going to see, it's going to be one bigger. I think it's going to be this one. So I'm going to use all my tools. Now, if I were hand drawing a mandala design or a repeating pattern design or something, you know, definitely that I wanted to be even and geometric, I would 100% use all the tools at my disposal to do that. And so when I look at this at first glance, it looks really complicated to draw, but notice how each of these points lines up with a point of this star in the center. And that if I start here to put the pattern in, just going to really take my time here. And I'm not expecting that these are going to all come out perfectly even. I'm not that patient. So I want to create a semblance of the design, something that relates to the design, but that I don't feel, those might be, I think those are a little too pointy on the ends there. And I love how that the pattern just continues, right? So simply. In this square here, we have the Star of David sort of built in already to the edge of our pattern. And I'm just going to start to play with these shapes. This might end up being a draft that I photocopy and gets printed out and practiced a little bit. I wouldn't say these are, shapes that I know. They're shapes that are new to me that I'm not 100% comfortable drawing. I got a dirty eraser there. And the thin, fine point of the mechanical pencil is great for this because it is very fine tipped. All right, and then it's going to be a lot of repetition. This might be one that I don't finish in an hour. I'd be happy if I even just got it drawn in an hour. That would be pretty spectacular. So I'm seeing where my proportions aren't quite right because there's supposed to be a diamond shape in here, which means I made this shape a little bit too big. And yet by the time I add color to this, or maybe I could even zentangle it, that might be really cool. So again, this is sort of practicing all of these little shapes. And I love how the tips of everything line up. So I'm definitely running out of room on this one, which is interesting. And I'm wondering about the proportions here. We're going to start that one over. And I think I'm going to do one of my favorite tricks and build some muscle memory here to get some of these shapes down on the page. Let's see if we can get this lined up with our lines. This may or may not work, we'll see. Everything is a big fat experiment. It's much further down than I thought. This is going to help me just be able to see the shapes a little bit better. So this one I actually had pretty good. It was looks like these points are just quite a bit sharper here. It is an ambitious page. Hi, Georgia. And I could trace the whole thing too, but I was curious about, yes, you're so helpful, about the math of it all and how the grid patterns are set up. But I'm not sure I'm actually feeling patient enough for that this evening. So what would it be like? So photocopying it wouldn't get me the pattern on the page, right? It is it's a printed copy of an image off the internet, but I'm thinking that I could trace it on here so that I could paint it into my page, and then that would allow me to get to the painting part quicker. So that actually feels a little more joyful than what I was doing here. Let's see if I can find a different pencil. I know. It's called being sometimes I'm a lazy artist and an impatient one, and I just want to get to the fun part of the process, which is adding the color to it. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to create my own graphite paper by just coloring over the background. If you've watched very many of my episodes, this is a technique I use. I love using the techniques that I used in kindergarten, right? Like things that I learned as a kid are still valuable. There is absolute benefit to creating original patterns and drawings, and then there's spending time doing the things that you love, right? And I think the faster I can make it and the more childlike I can make it, the better. I was up very early painting this morning and have just finished a really large canvas, large for me, and it's almost finished. It's not quite finished, but I started painting really early this morning, and I can feel my brain feels mushy and not quite so lively this evening. Gail says you're doing a collage about your trip to England, Glastonbury. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, very fun. That sounds amazing. I love that. So I'm going to start with just one of these little spaces here and make sure, okay, it needs to get lifted up just a little bit. And then I'm going to grab a ballpoint pen and that will help with the tracing. I'll be able to see where I'm going and get a little more pressure on that next page. And it's funny as I start to get up close and personal with this image, I can really see where the imperfections are. You know, at first glance, it looks like this is amazingly perfect and everything's perfectly aligned. Well, it's actually not, which reminds me of the principles of zentangle. There's no mistakes. So I'm going to do my, okay, that graphite isn't as dark as I need it to be. Interesting. Let's try a little sharper pencil. I love it when things don't work out when I'm live on camera. It's nice when things work out and they're easy and they're pretty, but this is the hard work of being an artist. And I'm just as grateful for this part as all of the other parts. Okay, that was better. And I don't have graphite up at that edge, so that's why that's not, so I'll go back and I can finish those. But it's these little, sometimes what seem boring or tedious processes that make us better artists. And so, in addition to being grateful for my trip to the Alhambra, I'm also incredibly grateful for the challenges of my creative practice. Yes, I totally have graphite paper over on the other side of the studio. I'm being lazy and I'm literally using exactly what's right in front of me in the moment, making it work. The other tip to making your own graphite paper, so sometimes it's extra graphite on the back, but also having a very sharp pointed pen makes that process a lot easier as well. And I'm also noticing, I didn't take that graphite all the way to the edge of the paper. So I will go back and do that, or I'll have enough started, I'll be able to repeat the patterns on my own. These curved ones around the edges definitely feel tricky. And I can also just settle in to the quiet and the repetition of just line after line. Again, it's that little bit of muscle memory. I'm learning the shapes as I do this. I'm seeing the placement, how they're laid out. It's coming along. If you're catching the replay, this might be one of those videos where you fast forward through the tracing part. Not much to see here right now. Mia and Georgia are just hanging out, tracing over all these lines, and Marion and Gail. And I shared at the beginning that I'm appreciating the sort of nostalgia of some of these gratitude prompts, right? And how they're, taking me definitely down some memory lane. And Georgia is impinging further and further onto the page and onto the table. She literally has her head resting on my drawing arm. I don't know why she always has to lay on my arm that I'm drawing with. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more here and then the center. And then I'm going to pause and add some color and just talk about where I'm going to go next. So you don't have to sit here and watch me trace lines. And I love the little details between pieces and how with a slight shift a square becomes a diamond, right? So just noticing again, right, the places in the pattern that call my eye. So not just the pattern overall, but these individual shape, the interconnectedness of the shapes. And as I'm working, I remember so keenly just sort of mouth agape, like standing in front of these walls of tile and these beautiful fountains and these giant Turkish baths. I remember the sound of the water and the quiet of the space. I remember the vivid colors. The rose gardens were in bloom, so it was just as beautiful outside as it was inside. And it definitely feels like this is one of those pieces that I could explore and enjoy in a variety of different ways. I can see it inspiring other drawings. I can see it influencing my mark making or maybe even some stencil designs as I'm tracing over these shapes. And I'm not trying to be too perfect with them. And it's interesting because I don't know if it was the light on the photo, but the tiles look blue over here and black over here. Can definitely see variations in color that, could be dirt or people's hands having rubbed off on the tiles. And I found this image online in someone's article about the tiles and the patterns of the Alhambra. This looked like the simplest of the patterns. Georgia, you're not helping. All right. How are we doing? Not too bad. We're a little bit off our grid, but I think that's okay. All right, Missy, you gotta go. If I don't worry as much about the grid and I focus on the pattern, now I can go back and I want to be able to see these lines, and eventually I'm going to want those grid lines to disappear. And as I'm drawing, I'm noticing different shapes between, like, look at this shape between these patterns here. There's a star shape in here. Like, who thought of that? What amazing artistic eye that these spaces between with these other little patterns form stars. Like, that just amazes me, right? Like, so I love the detail of seeing up close things that I wouldn't necessarily notice just the first time I look at first glance. And this would be fun to color with colored pencils. It would be fun to add watercolor to, or even just some good old-fashioned Crayola markers. And I'm glad I drew the grid pattern first. I can see now the mistakes I made when I was drawing, that I was making these patterns, these pointy bits, like way too big. I can even look at how could I change or modify the pattern, make it easier to draw or more pleasing to my eye. In my journal, my eye is the one that matters. And I feel like what I have is kind of a big old mess. A big old mess. Hi, Yvonne. Thank you. Yeah, the pattern is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So, Yvonne, our prompt tonight is, what are the places that you have traveled to that you would love to revisit, or places that you would like to travel to? And what gratitude have those opportunities for travel sparked in you? So those are some of the prompts and questions that are on our mind here this evening. All right. So I'm thinking about where I want to go with this. I'm thinking about, time spent so far, and it's a fun idea. And this might take me days to complete, and so I get to decide if I want to spend that much time on this, or, maybe I'll just take it upstairs and sit in front of the TV and work on drawing the pattern completely. And I'm kind of feeling like I want the softness of colored pencil. That I could create some really nice effects with colored pencil. Georgia, I don't know why all of a sudden, as soon as I'm on Zoom, she gets so needy. Like, surely you're talking to me, Mama. It is an absolutely gorgeous pattern. So that's one thing I'm noticing is even in my little bit wonky hand-drawn version, it is quite a beautiful pattern. And the Alhambra in Granada, and also we went to a town called Cordova. And even in some of the cathedrals, there were Moorish columns and Moorish architecture, Arabic and Turkish, and all these different cultural influences. To visit in Maryland, true adventure. Yeah, Maryland has definitely a different vibe than California. It's a beautiful, beautiful state for sure. I remember one of my friends from grad school lived or grew up on the edge of the Chesapeake Bay, and she was living and working in Washington, D.C., and I went to stay with her one summer and did some temp work in D.C., and we drove out to Maryland. And what I remember most about that is when I met Mary Alice, we were in grad school together at the University of Texas at Austin. And she always used to say that the skies in Texas were so big. And I never really understood what she meant until I went back to the East Coast where there's so many trees and the roads are going between the trees and you can't see but one tiny little strip of blue sky up above your head. And for me, who'd grown up in Texas and then went on to live in California and Colorado, I'm so used to big sweeping views of everything everywhere that it was a little claustrophobic to be on these roads. There's some like that in Oregon as well. So it's amazing what our reaction is to the different places we get to visit. And I remember going to Annapolis, Maryland, where they have an absolutely amazing aquarium and a saloon called Riordan Saloon, which is my last name, a really popular spot in Annapolis, Maryland. So it was fun to get a picture in front of the sign. But they had one of these amazing aquariums that had a rainforest in it where you got to really ride an escalator up to the top of the rainforest and then walk your way back down through all the different levels and layers. And apologies for anybody that joined me live yesterday morning. I turned on my little heat dryer and it flipped the breaker in my power. And so twice right in the middle of my videos, I ended up with a complete and total power outage in my computer, my lights and everything. So I think the first video from yesterday ended with an oops, and then everything went dark. We're not really sure why. All right, I kind of like the unfinished edges, right? Like the not having the complete pattern, but also not having the hard edges of the paper, that there's a little bit of mystery to the pattern there that is kind of different. And where I don't quite draw it right, I don't quite get that star shape in there, which is interesting. So we see that star shape in some places, but not in all of the places. But it's coming together. It's coming together. Yes, I know. Miss Super Helpful over here. And I'm wondering how I'm going to use the grid lines, because the original photo doesn't have those grid lines. And I don't know that I'm going to want to see those grid lines. That's awesome. I love that. Did you spend any time in DC? I love DC. There's so much to see there as well. All right, so we're going to see if we can get this lined up again. Nope, needs to come down this way a bit. Close enough. Usually if I have a lot of tracing to do like this, I'll get a little piece of washi tape along the edge of my paper just to hold the paper in place. And I love the color combos. So there's orange and blue, and then there's this pretty jade green and blue. I noticed that all the center spaces are all the same shade of blue. There's some purple in here. So what other travel memories, while I'm focused here, what other travel memories? We have England and Maryland, and I think Marion had some Italy up there. Now Diego's coming to visit. Oh, it's getting very close to his dinner time, so he couldn't get Brad's attention. He's gonna see if he can come down here and get my attention. All right. I think I'm gonna pause with the tracing here. I do like the dark lines. I'm a little bit off my grid lines, but it doesn't quite matter, since I'm not as focused on those grid lines as I was at the beginning. And I'm curious, now that I've started the patterns, what would it be like to complete the patterns? I have a better sense of where I'm going, what I'm drawing. And it's important to pause as we go and decide, where am I with this and where do I want to go next? Maybe it's just going to stay black and white like this, half drawn, and I'll be done with it. That's an option too, right? That's an option too. But there's also something kind of inviting about maybe trying to add some color or finish up the pattern or go some different directions. I'm not quite sure. Going to Acapulco as a kid, Yvonne, I love that. So my stepdad, we traveled a lot as kids in the summers, but we always did driving trips here in the United States. He never wanted to go outside of the United States. But I sure saw a lot of the western, and we never went east, we always went west. But having grown up in San Antonio, Texas, for us going to Mexico usually just meant a trip for some shopping down to the border. So now I can look at this and I could come in here and just practice some of that drawing. And I love how these little star shapes are there to guide me as I go. It's way easier to trace it than to draw it on my own. But what I love about this, whether I choose to finish it or not, like this will get attached into my journal page, and I probably will finish it. I just won't finish it tonight, but I think I'm going to take it upstairs and finish the drawing of it, add some color to it, and it gave me that opportunity to just sit and reflect and remember a place I haven't thought about in decades, right? I'll go look, Gail, for yours on Instagram. And the trip was on July 15th. Oh, that was one of the scraps you included, and it's your birthday. I love that. So fun. So I'm thinking I'm going to pause here. There's more to do, a lot more to do. And I'm going to think about where I want to go next with this. I have another call in a few minutes, so I'm going to pop off, but I will be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. And I'm enjoying these prompts, flipping through the pages. And it's interesting as I'm going through these different prompts from the gratitude prompt journal, some of them really invite writing more than they do for me the visual. And so some of them I've kind of skipped around and skipped over. But I really did like this one about 3 things I appreciate about my home and my living space. And I think I'm going to focus on this one tomorrow, and I will put some thought this evening into what would that look like? How could I recreate in my art journal, maybe with just some drawing or sketching, some of the things I appreciate about my home and my living space? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that one while I continue to work on and finish up this particular pattern. I'm glad it was helpful. It was definitely challenging and tricky. I think it's good to see that sometimes projects take a lot longer. This wasn't a sit down and quickie finish something in an hour. That I just got started, and I'm okay with just getting started, and I'll be excited to continue to work on it and finish it up. I know yesterday I finished this one after I got off the call, after the 2 times my computer shut down, and I ended up being really happy with this cute spread yesterday, and it would be a fun collage. I definitely thought about that option as well. And the tenacious, like really stubborn part of me is, no, I want to draw it in my journal. But this piece will definitely get attached and stay here. but I'm loving seeing the pieces mount up. I'm also doing Tiara Smith's gratitude junk journal this month, and I'm really enjoying some different prompts. This was another one about travel. This was reminiscent of, and it was just happenstance that I picked two about travel. I know too many options. A trip to Mesa Verde, which is one of my most favorite places to visit in the United States. So what I'm appreciating again is just the time and opportunity to think about what's important, right? And to go deeper than just, oh, I'm thankful for my husband and my roof over my head, which I am very grateful for those things. But these prompts are really helping me sink a little deeper into what really matters. So I want to encourage you to take your time to reflect on the prompts and really feel the deeper level of gratitude and for all the experiences that you've had and you've enjoyed. As always, thank you so much for joining me live. I'll be back tomorrow morning, Thursday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time, and we will talk about things that make our home and living space special, which will be a really fun one. I wish I had a place in my house for these gorgeous tiles. As always, thank you for joining me. Thank you for playing along. Love being here live with each and every one of you. If you watch the replay, thank you. And I appreciate you, and I'll see you guys all soon. Good night, everybody.